Camaro. Any oil. Kairie mwana Kamaru njukena nindoka tuthomithie ciana kana njiarwa mĩtĩ ya Gĩkũyũ nĩngwamba kũmũria nyũmba itũ tũmaririkane Gĩkũyũ na mũmbithe na nyina wa rũrĩrĩ rwitũ itanaikara thĩ Kamaru ngũthomithia ciana mĩtĩ yarĩ mĩingĩ ya kĩrĩti nengĩ ya werũ-inĩ mũtĩ wa mũgumo ũtongoretie mũkũyũ mũkũrwe yarĩ ya igongona naguo mũiri-inĩ wayagwo ngĩrĩ yarĩ mawĩra maingĩ mũno mũtĩ wa mũringa wayagwo itĩ mũtuya nĩ itunda naguo mũruma ndwatuagwo mũndũri wa nyũngũ na mũkarakinga na cong'e hamwe na mũthũnga ĩyo nĩ mĩtĩ ĩmwe yakagĩrwo thathi-inĩ ũkĩhĩrwo gũthomithia ciana Kamaru kĩrangi kĩa uko na nĩkĩo gĩtatĩ kĩheagwo mũtĩ wa mwenjere na nyambo cia rũa njĩjũagio mũtĩ wa mũkenia na mũthima mbũri mathĩnjĩro tũgatua mĩthakwa mũtĩ wa mũroha wayagwo mĩako ya njũkĩ mũrambati mũtĩ mwana ciara atemagĩrwo irigũ itanaikara thĩ Kamaru reke njere ciana mĩtĩ ya matunda ma Gĩkũyũ tondũ marĩ maingĩ mũtuya nĩ ituya matunda mũkawa nĩ ngawa mũbiro nĩ mbiro na matunda mũtare nĩ ndare mũnathi nĩ nathi mũkamburo ciaraga ngambura nĩkwarĩ thigio na ngoe nganaio mongoya ĩrĩa yatigara timĩ nyiki njorua ya Gĩkũyũ tikei na ndũrũ na kĩratũ na ndicũ matwĩre kĩrĩkia gũkwĩra Kamaru ndũkandirikanie baraya rĩnene manjenetie kĩninaga ciothe yarĩ nene nomene yarĩ nene arũme moigaga mbu ndahũrĩtwo ngathanĩrĩra mĩatũ
So, I want you to just close your eyes for a second here. Imagine it is Saturday morning. You have this to-do list that is just absolutely miles long.
Oh, I know that feeling all too well.
Right. So you need to fix a broken handle on your favorite shovel. You need to buy some cough syrup because you have this cold that just won't quit.
Okay.
You need to pick up a bottle of wine for a dinner party later that night. You need some sandpaper to finish a woodworking project in the garage. And let's say you also need to buy some heavy timber to reinforce your front porch.
I mean, that honestly sounds like a complete nightmare of a Saturday.
It really does.
You're driving to the hardware store, then you have to go to the pharmacy, then the liquor store, then over to the lumberyard. You're stuck in weekend traffic, dealing with crowded parking lots, scanning barcodes all day.
Exactly. It is a massive logistical headache. But now I want you to imagine you could get every single one of those things. And I don't mean cheap substitutes. I mean high quality, highly specialized versions of all of those items just by walking maybe 500 yards out your back door.
Wow.
No car, no wallet, no plastic packaging to rip open, just trees.
It sounds like a total fantasy, doesn't it?
It really does.
But for most of human history, and very specifically for the culture we are going to be looking at today, that was just everyday reality. The forest wasn't just, scenery or nice place to go for a weekend hike. It was a hyper-advanced living inventory system.
And that is exactly the concept we're unpacking today. We're calling it the living hardware store. We are doing a deep dive into the indigenous trees of the Kikuyu people of Kenya.
Right.
And we aren't just talking about, some vague idea of living near nature. We are talking about a society that had this incredibly rigorous scientific and even spiritual understanding of their specific botanical environment.
It is a totally fascinating topic because it really challenges our modern definition of what technology actually is.
Yeah, how so?
Well, we tend to think of technology as just silicon chips and touchscreens and software.
Yeah.
But if you know exactly which tree bark contains the specific alkaloids required to cure malaria,
Right.
or you know which specific wood has the exact tensile strength to endure the impact of a spear throw without snapping. That is technology. It's applied material science. It is botanical engineering.
I love that way of framing it. And we are basing this entire deep dive on a massive, and I mean truly massive, technical handbook.
Oh, the brick.
It really is. It's called Useful Trees and Shrubs for Kenya, published by the World Agroforestry Center. And honestly, reading through this thing, I felt like I was flipping through a catalog for the world's most organic, high-end department store.
It really reads like a catalog. The amount of detail is staggering.
Yeah.
And the mission of this deep dive, if we have a specific mission today, is to explore how the Kikuyu people and their neighbors in the Central Highlands, they didn't just survive in this forest.
No, they thrived.
Exactly. They thrived because they knew this catalog entirely by heart. They knew the inventory of their environment.
So we are going to basically walk through this open-air pharmacy and hardware store with you. We are going to look at the trees that built the homes, the ones that cured the sick, fueled the parties, and even the ones that anchored the entire spiritual life of the community.
It's a really incredible journey into a very specific kind of material science.
Let's start right at the very top. Section 1, the sacred giants. If you are standing in the landscape of central Kenya, specifically in Kikuyu country, there's this one silhouette that just completely dominates everything else around it.
Oh, absolutely.
It's like the cathedral of the forest.
The Mugumo.
Yes, the Mugumo. Ficus thonningii, commonly known as the strangler fig. You honestly cannot talk about the Kikuyu relationship with the land without talking about the Mugumo tree.
It's that central.
It is the axis mundi, the absolute center of the world, spiritually speaking.
It is so visually iconic, too. But before we get into the heavy spiritual side of things, we should probably talk about the biology first.
Good idea. Because the name strangler fig implies a little bit of violence. And honestly, the way this particular tree grows is like something straight out of a sci-fi horror movie, just playing out in incredibly slow motion.
It is aggressive biological engineering, without a doubt. The Mugumo is what botanists call a hemiepiphyte.
Okay, break that down for us.
Basically, it means it often doesn't start its life on the ground like a normal tree would. It actually starts up in the air.
So what, like a bird drops seed?
Exactly that. A bird eats a fig somewhere else, flies over to a different tree, usually a very large, already established host tree, and drops the seed into a fork in the branches.
Wow.
Maybe 30 or 40 feet up in the air.
Yeah.
And the seed just germinates right up there. It's essentially a squatter.
It's just crashing on someone else's couch.
Right. But then it starts to completely take over the house.
This is the horror movie part.
It really is. The Mugumo starts sending these long, thin aerial roots, dangling all the way down through the air. They just look like these innocent little strings or ropes hanging from the branches.
He's dangling there.
Yeah, but once those roots finally hit the soil down below, everything changes. They anchor in, they start vigorously pumping up water and nutrients from the ground, and they begin to thicken.
And this is where the strangling part actually happens.
Precisely. The roots start to wrap around the trunk of the original host tree. They fuse together in a process called anastomosis.
Anastomosis.
Yeah, they form this tight lattice and eventually a solid, rigid cylinder of wood that completely encases the host.
That is wild.
And at the same time, the mugumo's own leafy canopy is growing rapidly, overtaking the host tree's canopy, literally stealing all of the sunlight.
So it starves it of light from above and crushes it from the outside?
Exactly. The host tree eventually dies and just rots away entirely inside that cage of roots.
So wait, when we see a really massive ancient mugumo tree today, we are actually looking at a hollow pillar of roots that conquered another tree centuries ago.
Very often, yes. It is a tree literally born from a hostile takeover. And that resulting structure, it's massive, heavily fluted, usually with this huge, scrawling, spreading crown. It gives it this incredible sense of permanence and absolute power. It looks like a fortress.
And in Kikuyu culture, that immense visual power translates very directly into spiritual power, right?
Oh, very much so. The source material is completely clear on this point. The mugumo is a profoundly sacred tree. It is the traditional shrine.
The actual shrine.
Yes. Among the Kikuyu, but also neighboring groups like the Kamba and the Meru, this tree is where the elders would traditionally go to offer sacrifices to God. Thonningii.
So you didn't need to build a stone cathedral with a steeple or stained glass. You just found a mugumo.
You found a mugumo.
Why this tree, though, do you think? Beyond just the massive size of it.
I really think it's the sheer longevity and the resilience it represents. These trees are ancient. They have this smooth gray bark and a physical presence that just feels eternal.
It feels permanent.
Exactly. When you stand under mugumo, you're standing under something that was already a giant before your great-grandfather was even born. And it will likely still be standing long after your great-grandchildren have passed away. It naturally commands a deep reverence.
Now, here's the part where the sort of user manual aspect of our source text gets really funny to me.
Oh, the warning label.
Yes. We have this incredibly holy, deeply sacred tree. But the handbook includes a very specific, very practical warning. It just says, do not plant near buildings.
Yes, that is the strangler biology coming right back to haunt you.
I just love the juxtaposition of it. It's the sacred axis mundi, but please keep it away from the patio.
Well, the root system is just incredibly aggressive. It's evolutionarily designed to anchor a massive sprawling canopy and to actively strangle other huge trees.
Right.
So if you go and plant a mugumo right next to your modern concrete house, those roots are just going to treat your foundation like another host tree.
They'll just crush it.
They will crack the concrete, they will lift the floorboards right up, and they will essentially dismantle your house from the bottom up.
So the gods demand space. Keep the holy shrine a respectful distance from the living room.
Exactly. Give it room to breathe.
But the mugumo isn't just a spiritual symbol or a foundation destroyer. It is also a really multi-purpose tool in the strict hardware store sense, isn't it? Like the latex.
The latex is fascinating.
Explain the latex part.
So if you break a leaf off a mugumo, or if you cut into the bark, the tree bleeds this thick, white, milky sap.
Like a rubber tree.
Very similar.
Yeah.
And in a world before you could just go buy a tube of synthetic superglue, this sap was a premium go-to adhesive. It is incredibly sticky.
So they used it to actually bind things together.
Yes, as a general glue, but also as something called birdlime.
Birdlime.
It's a highly sticky substance you smear on branches to physically trap small birds when they land on it.
Wow. Okay, and there was another detail in the handbook about the ash from this tree that I found just incredibly specific and clever.
You're talking about the food preservative.
Yes, the ash as a preservative.
It's brilliant chemistry. If you take the bark of the mugumo and you burn it, the resulting ash has a very specific chemical composition.
It's not just regular campfire ash.
No, it acts as a preserving agent. People would actually use this ash to coat meat, or they would mix it in with stored grains and foods to keep them from rotting or getting infected.
That is just peak efficiency to me. You have this one single organism that connects you to the divine, provides the industrial glue to fix your tools, and provides the chemical agents to keep your family's food safe from spoiling.
It is the definition of a one-stop shop.
It really is. Now, there is a close cousin to the mugumo that we definitely have to mention here, the mukuyu.
Ah, yes, Ficus, sir. or Ficus capensis, the Cape fig.
So if I'm just walking through the forest in Kenya, how do I actually tell these two giant fig trees apart? How do I know if I'm looking at a mugumo or a mukuyu?
Well, the Kikuyu is usually a massive deciduous tree. It can grow up to 20 meters tall. But the absolute dead giveaway is a botanical phenomenon called cauliflory.
Cauliflory. Let's unpack that word for a second.
It's a great term. Usually when we think of a tree bearing fruit, we picture the fruit hanging delicately off the very ends of thin branches, right? Like cherries or apples.
Right, out on the tips.
Cauliflory means that the flowers, and subsequently the heavy fruits, grow directly out of the main, thick, woody trunk, or right off the massive primary branches.
So just picture a massive, solid, gray tree trunk that is just completely covered in heavy, clustered bunches of figs.
Exactly. Almost like giant green barnacles stuck to the trunk.
That has to look a little bit alien if you aren't used to seeing it.
It does look very strange at first, but ecologically, it's a brilliant strategy for the tree.
Why is that?
Because it makes these large, heavy fruits easily accessible to heavier animals that couldn't possibly climb out onto the fragile outer twigs without breaking them. They can just walk right up to the trunk or climb the sturdy base and eat.
And the source material explicitly says these particular figs are edible for humans too.
They are completely edible. They are quite sweet, very watery. But the handbook actually adds a little caveat that I really appreciated for its sheer honesty.
Oh, the bug warning.
Yes. It very dryly notes that while the figs are sweet and edible, they are, quote, often full of insects.
Just a fig with a little side of extra protein.
You are definitely not buying these pristine in a little plastic clamshell at a gourmet supermarket. Let's just put it that way.
Fair enough.
But socially, the mukuyu is just huge. Much like the mugumo, it holds status as a highly ceremonial tree.
But the wood itself has a very specific, very domestic use, right?
It does. The wood of the mukuyu is quite light and surprisingly easy to carve.
So what were they carving out of it?
It was the absolute standard material for making mortars.
Like for a mortar and pestle.
Exactly, the big wooden bowls used for heavily pounding grain. And crucially, it was the primary wood used to carve beer containers.
Okay, beer containers. I want everyone listening to just put a pin in that specific detail because I know we have a really heavy hitter coming up later regarding the actual production of that beer.
Oh, yes, we do.
But looking at it so far, it really seems like the Ficus family completely covers the community center aspect of the society.
Oh, I do.
You have the sacred shrine for prayer, the gathering place, and the actual vessels for the local brewery all coming from these massive figs.
It grounds the community, quite literally, into the landscape.
But if the Ficus species are the spirit and the hearth of the town, this next group of trees is definitely the emergency room.
Without a doubt.
Let's move into section 2, the pharmacist's cabinet.
This is where things get truly incredible.
Because this is where the specific granular botanical knowledge of the Kikuyu just absolutely blows my mind.
Right.
We aren't just talking about a general cup of tea for wellness here. We are talking about highly specific, targeted treatments for malaria, for severe stomach aches, and even highly complex chronic conditions.
It is entirely applied biochemistry.
Yeah.
They didn't have access to modern microscopes or mass spectrometers, but what they did have was generations upon generations of rigorous observational data.
Trial and error over centuries.
Exactly. And the undisputed star of this particular show is the muthika tree,
Or Burgea ugandensis.
also known commonly as the Kenyan greenheart. The muthika is just a biochemical powerhouse.
And you can actually tell how potent it is just by physically interacting with it, right?
You really can. If you were to walk right up to a muthika tree in the forest and just pull off a leaf and bite into it, which people actually do, you would notice something very distinct immediately.
What's the flavor profile?
It is hot, intensely peppery.
Like biting into a chili pepper.
Very much like that. And that intense peppery heat is a biological signal. It's the plant loudly declaring, I am absolutely full of potent bioactive compounds.
Which is why the leaves are actually used in cooking, right?
Yes, the leaves are frequently used in curries just for that wonderful spicy seasoning. But the culinary side is really just the tip of the iceberg.
The roots and the bark are where the real heavy medicine is.
Exactly. They are harvested and prepared to treat a huge range of things. Severe stomach aches, colds, throbbing toothaches, and significantly, malaria.
It is just amazing to me that someone long ago identified a tree that literally tastes like fire and realized, you know what, this specific heat will kill the fever.
Well, frequently in traditional medicine systems globally, very strong sensory experiences, extreme bitterness, intense heat, sharp astringency are strongly correlated with medicinal potency.
The logic being, if it tastes this strong, it must be doing something strong inside the body.
Right. But the muthiga has this other specific application that I just think is absolute genius.
The twigs.
The twigs. They are used extensively as toothbrushes.
Now, I feel like we need to clarify this. When we say toothbrush in this context, we definitely do not mean a little plastic stick with nylon bristles glued to it.
No, definitely not. We mean a traditional chewing stick.
Right.
You take a carefully selected twig of the muthiga tree, and you just start to chew on the end of it.
And the mechanical action of your teeth kind of frays the wood fibers?
Exactly. It turns the end of the twig into this dense, bristly sort of brush that you can then use to physically scrub your teeth.
But the genius part is that because it's specifically muthiga wood.
Yes. Because it's muthiga, you aren't just getting the mechanical scrubbing of the plaque. As you are chewing on that stick, you are actively releasing all of those hot, peppery, highly antibacterial and antimicrobial agents directly onto your gums and teeth.
So it is a toothbrush and an antibacterial toothpaste, totally combined into one single, completely biodegradable tool.
Dental hygiene perfectly integrated with medicinal chemistry. It is just brilliant design.
It really is. And ecologically speaking, where do you even find these trees if you need a toothbrush?
You'll often find them growing in riverine forests, but they have this really fascinating, highly specific affinity for termite mounds.
Termite mounds. Why would a tree prefer a termite mound?
Because termite mounds are incredibly nutrient-rich microhabitats.
Okay.
The termites are constantly bringing up deep, mineral-rich soil from way underground, and their waste products heavily enrich it further. It creates this perfectly aerated, highly fertile little hill.
And the muthiga tree just moves right in?
It absolutely loves that spot. So if you are out wandering in the wild and you need a fresh toothbrush, your best bet is to scan the landscape for a termite mound.
That is just such a specific, cool piece of local knowledge. Okay, the next tree in our pharmacist's cabinet is one that has actually crossed over very heavily into the modern global pharmaceutical industry.
It has.
But it's also a bit of a tragic story, honestly. The muri tree.
Prunus africana, the red stinkwood. Yes, this is a very heavy topic because this particular tree is really a victim of its own incredible medicinal success.
Explain how so.
On a global scale, highly refined extracts from the bark of Prunus africana are heavily used to manufacture mainstream pharmaceutical drugs.
Specifically for what?
Primarily for treating prostate cancer and benign prostatic hyperplasia, or BPH.
Right.
It is a massive multi-million-dollar global industry today.
So basically, modern science discovered exactly what the Kikuyu and other indigenous groups in the region already knew for centuries.
Essentially, yes. The traditional indigenous use involves carefully harvesting and boiling the bark and the leaves to make a potent medicinal drink.
And they used it for urinary tract issues and chest pains?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the thing is, it absolutely works. The biochemistry is completely sound.
But the problem arises when the whole world suddenly wants it.
That is exactly the issue. The massive global demand led to incredibly destructive, massive overharvesting in the wild.
Because people were just going in and aggressively stripping these wild trees.
Yes. And you have to understand the basic biology of a tree to see why this is so fatal.
The bark isn't just a wrapper.
No, the inner bark, the phloem, is essentially the main circulatory system of the entire tree.
It transports the food.
Right. It transports the sugars and nutrients produced up in the leaves all the way down to feed the root system.
So if you do what they call ring barking.
Right, ring barking. If you strip the bark off all the way around the entire circumference of the trunk, you completely sever that vital connection.
You're cutting the artery.
The roots completely starve to death, and then the entire tree dies.
So these commercial poachers were literally killing ancient trees just to quickly strip the bark for cash.
Exactly. And the sad part is sustainable harvesting is completely possible.
How do you do it sustainably?
You can carefully take thin vertical strips from alternating sides of the trunk, and then you just leave the tree alone to heal and regenerate.
But that takes time.
It requires extreme patience, careful management, and a respect for the organism. The absolute gold rush mentality for Prunus africana bark just threw all of that out the window.
And now it's becoming quite rare in the wild.
It is under tremendous ecological pressure.
Which is such a massive shame, not just for the loss of the medicine, but because the tree itself provides this incredibly beautiful wood, right?
The timber's stunning. The hardwood, the very dense inner wood, darkens as it ages to this incredibly deep, rich red color.
Hence the name red stinkwood.
Exactly. It makes for absolutely beautiful, heavy furniture.
But cutting down an ancient Prunus africana just to make a dining room table feels like an incredible waste when that same tree is literally a living, regenerating pharmacy for cancer treatment.
It is a profound waste. It is a classic case of resource management failure.
You essentially have a biological factory that actively produces life-saving medicine, but it takes maybe 50 years to build that factory to grow the tree, and some guy can completely destroy it in 10 minutes with a panga just to make a quick buck.
Exactly. We really have to learn to value the living tree far more than we value the dead parts we extract from it.
Absolutely. Okay, let's move on to a tree that has a little bit of a PR problem historically, or at least a serious naming problem.
Ah, yes.
The fever tree.
Acacia xanthophylla.
The classic Naivasha thorn.
Yes. If you have ever seen any nature documentary or photos of Lake Naivasha or Lake Nakuru in Kenya, you have absolutely seen these trees.
They are completely unmistakable. They are these very tall, slightly eerie-looking trees with this very strange, sickly, yellow-green, powdery bark. They honestly look like they are gloaming in the wrong way. Like they've been colored in with radioactive highlighters.
They do have a very strange visual vibe, and the early European colonizers and travelers who arrived in the region called them fever trees because they noticed a very strong correlation.
What was the correlation?
They noticed that wherever these specific yellow trees grew in abundance, people tended to catch malaria.
So they just directly blamed the tree.
They literally thought the tree itself was causing the fever. Their logic was just stay far away from the glowing yellow trees or you will get incredibly sick.
The irony, of course, is that they completely missed the actual ecology of what was happening.
Entirely. They missed the fact that this specific tree species absolutely loves water.
It's a swamp tree.
Right. It grows primarily in low-lying, swampy areas, right along the edges of lakes and slow-moving rivers.
And what else loves stagnant, swampy water?
Mosquitoes.
Exactly.
The mosquitoes were the actual vector for the malaria, not the tree.
The tree was basically just an innocent bystander that happened to share the exact same preferred habitat as the mosquito.
Exactly. But here is the absolute double irony that our source manual points out, which I just love.
The local use?
Yes. The Kikuyu and other local indigenous groups who actually understood the environment actively use the inner bark of this exact same tree to treat malaria.
That is just unbelievable to me.
Oh.
So the colonizers arrive and think the tree is literally emitting the disease, while the locals have been using that exact same tree for generations to cure the disease.
That is exactly what happened. The inner bark is either chewed directly or boiled into a decoction.
It's a perfect historical example of how simple observation can lead to two totally opposed conclusions, entirely depending on your depth of ecological understanding.
Absolutely. The outside traveler looks at it and sees a simple correlation. Tree equals sickness.
Run away from the tree.
Right. But the local inhabitant sees a much deeper web. Tree grows in the area of sickness. Therefore, the tree itself might actually hold the chemical answer to the sickness.
That is such a profound difference in worldview. One perspective is entirely fear-based and reactionary. The other is resource-based and deeply curious.
Precisely. And beyond the whole malaria treatment aspect, that yellow bark really is physically distinct.
You mentioned it's powdery.
Yes, if you walk up to it and rub your hand on the trunk, a fine yellow dust will actually rub right off onto your fingers. It is a defining, iconic texture of the Rift Valley landscape.
It's just incredible how much history is tied up in one species.
Definitely.
So we've got the sacred giants making up the shrines. We've got the pharmacy providing the medicine. Now I want to shift gears and talk about something that feels a bit more, let's say, festive.
The social side of things.
Yes. Every culture on Earth has a center of social gravity, right? And very frequently, that social gravity revolves around specific foods or drinks.
Oh, certainly.
In this particular case, the entire social structure seems to revolve around one very bizarre-looking tree.
You were talking about Section 3, the celebration tree, Kigelia africana.
Locally known as the Muratina.
Or, to use its incredibly descriptive English common name, the sausage tree.
The sausage tree. And really, there is no other way to accurately describe it.
There really isn't. If you are standing under one and you look up into the dense canopy, you just see these massive, gray, perfectly sausage-shaped fruits hanging straight down.
And they hang on these very long rope-like stalks, right?
It's just dangling there in midair.
And when we say massive, we aren't kidding. The source book notes that these fruits can be up to 60 centimeters long.
That is 2 solid feet of dense, heavy fruit.
Extremely heavy. You absolutely do not want to be taking a nice afternoon nap under Kigelia tree when the wind blows and one of those fruits decides to drop.
Definitely not. It could easily knock you out cold. It's a genuine hazard.
So my first instinct when I see a giant fruit like that is, okay, is it edible? Can I just slice up this giant tree sausage and have a nice snack?
Absolutely not. Do not do that. Unripe, the fruit is highly poisonous.
Good to know.
And even when it is fully ripe, the raw flesh is incredibly fibrous, tough, and it's a very strong purgative.
Okay, so you definitely do not eat the sausage.
You do not eat it. You use the sausage to make the actual magic happen.
The beer.
The beer. Traditional Kikuyu beer, which is also confusingly called miratina, just like the tree, is the absolute centerpiece of communal social life.
What is the beer actually made of?
The base liquid is actually made from freshly pressed sugarcane juice mixed with honey.
That sounds delicious, but if you just mix sugarcane juice and honey together, you don't get alcohol, you just get really sweet syrup.
Exactly. To turn that sugary syrup into actual alcohol, to get it to actively ferment, you absolutely need a catalyst.
And the sausage tree provides that exact catalyst.
It does. The process is fascinating. They take the giant fruit of the Kigelia, they bake it near a fire, and then they dry it out completely in the sun.
So it's cured?
Yes. Then they slice it open and add those dried pieces directly into the vats of sugarcane and honey mixture.
What does the fruit actually do in the vat?
The rough, porous surface of that specially prepared fruit actively harbors wild yeasts and specific environmental microbes.
So it inoculates the liquid?
Precisely. It introduces the precise microorganisms necessary to kickstart the fermentation process.
And does it affect the taste at all?
Massively. It also imparts its own specific chemical compounds that give the finished miratina drink its highly distinct, slightly sour-sweet flavor profile.
So the tree is literally acting as the brewmaster?
Literally. Without the Kigelia fruit acting as a sponge for the yeast, there is simply no miratina brew.
And without the brew?
Without the brew, the entire traditional social machinery basically grinds to a halt.
It's that important.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
You need this specific drink to conduct proper dowry negotiations between families. You need it to celebrate weddings. You need it for elders to perform blessings. It is the required social lubricant for almost every major communal event.
So this one weird-looking tree literally fuels the culture.
It does. And because of that central role, it is incredibly highly revered. The source manual specifically notes that traditional farmers will almost always actively preserve a Kigelia tree on their land.
Even if they are clearing the rest of the plot for agriculture.
Even then, they will chop down everything else to plant maize, but they leave the sausage tree standing alone in the field.
Because you do not cut down the local brewery.
Exactly. It's just common sense.
That makes perfect sense. But, you know, there was another really small note in the source text about this specific tree that touched on something much darker, or maybe just more poignant.
Yes, the morning ritual.
Yes. This detail honestly stopped me dead in my tracks when I read it.
It's a very powerful cultural practice. The manual mentions that historically, if a person from the community was lost.
Lost meaning?
Say a young warrior went off to battle and was killed but never returned. Or perhaps someone was taken by a wild predator in the bush and the body was simply never recovered.
Right.
The community and the family still absolutely needed to hold a funeral. They needed that psychological closure.
But you can't really bury an empty grave and get that same sense of finality.
Exactly. So what they would do is they would go and take a single heavy fruit of the Kigelia tree, the miratina sausage.
And they would use it as a stand-in.
They would physically bury that large fruit in the ground in place of the missing human body.
They would actually bury the fruit as a direct symbol of the human form.
Yes. It strongly suggests this incredibly deep symbolic connection between the people and the forest.
Because the fruit is roughly the size and weight of a torso or a small person.
Maybe it's the physical shape and weight, yes. Or maybe it's just the deeper philosophical idea that this specific tree is already so central to the joy and life of the community that its fruit is the only thing worthy of standing in for a lost human life.
Wow.
It allowed the grieving family to actually perform the physical rites, to say a proper goodbye, and to move forward.
That is just beautiful and incredibly heavy. It really shows that these trees aren't just useful in a strictly mechanical, utilitarian sense. They are deeply woven into the emotional and psychological landscape of the people.
It creates vital closure where there is none. That is a profoundly powerful function for a plant to serve in a society.
Truly. Okay, let's take a breath and pivot from the heavy emotional stuff over to the strictly practical stuff.
Into the tool shed.
Yes, Section 4, the tool shed.
Yeah.
Because this is where we really see the Kikuyu operating purely as material scientists.
Absolutely. The engineering aspect.
Right, because if you need to build a tool handle or specifically a weapon like a spear, you can't just walk out and pick up any random stick off the ground.
No, it would fail immediately.
It might snap on impact. It might rot from the inside out in a month. It might just be way too heavy to carry all day. You need very specific material specs.
And the absolute gold standard for high-stress, high-impact tools is a tree called Vepris nobilis,
The mundarindu.
also known fittingly as the warrior's tree.
So what makes this wood so special?
The wood of the mundarindu is visually very pale, but it is incredibly tough and, crucially, highly flexible.
And that flexibility is the key metric.
It's everything.
Because it's specifically used for making bows and spears.
Exactly. Think about the pure physics of a thrown spear.
Right.
When you throw it with immense force, or when it finally impacts a hard wooden shield or an animal, the wooden shaft undergoes a tremendous amount of kinetic stress.
It violently vibrates and bends.
Yes. If the wood you chose is too dense and brittle, it simply snaps in half on impact.
You lose your weapon.
But if it's too soft and bendy, it won't fly straight or pierce the target. It's entirely useless.
So it has to be perfect.
The mundarindu hits that absolute perfect sweet spot of tensile strength and elasticity. It actively absorbs the shock of the impact without shattering.
So they basically stress-tested the entire forest, generation after generation, and scientifically zeroed in on the exact one species of wood that could consistently survive the rigors of battle.
Exactly. It's generations of rigorous material testing conducted directly in the field.
And interestingly, the source text notes a very specific agricultural problem with this tree. It says young mundarindu saplings constantly have to be fiercely protected.
Oh yes, because local goats absolutely love to eat the fresh leaves.
Of course they do. Goats are basically the sworn enemies of reforestation everywhere on the planet.
They really are. They will eat anything green.
So you have this fascinating domestic tension.
You need the adult tree to craft the weapons required to defend your home and your herd.
But your own herd of goats actively wants to eat the weapon before it can even grow into a tree.
Exactly. So actively managing that specific biological resource, protecting the saplings from your own livestock, becomes a vital daily job in itself.
Now, once you have finally grown the tree, harvested the wood, and carved your spear shaft, the surface is going to be rough.
It needs finishing.
You need to smooth it out, you need sandpaper,
Oh, yeah.
But obviously you can't just go down to the local hardware store and buy a pack of 120 grit paper.
You don't need to. You just go find a Cordia minoica tree.
The mukiyu, nature's very own sandpaper.
Literally, the broad leaves of the muki tree are completely covered in these very stiff, rigid, microscopic hairs.
And those hairs contain silica, right?
Highly likely, yes. They feel incredibly rough and gritty to the touch.
So how are they used?
The local artisans use the freshly plucked leaves cottage industrially, to actively sand and polish finished wood products.
And they use it for gourds, too.
Yes, to smooth out the rough insides of hollowed-out gourd bowls used for eating and drinking.
I just absolutely love that visual image. Just walking over to a tree, plucking off a handful of fresh leaves, and using them to aggressively sand down your wooden table.
It is the ultimate disposable, infinitely renewable, completely biodegradable, abrasive material.
It really is.
It works perfectly. And the muki is yet another one of these incredible multitaskers we keep seeing.
What else does it do?
Well, the wood itself is fairly porous and light, but it's durable enough that it is frequently used to construct traditional beehives.
Beehives, that actually seems to come up a lot in this manual.
It does. Honey was, and still very much is, a major high-value commodity in the region. We will definitely see that specific theme recur as we look at other trees.
Okay, so sandpaper leaves, beehive wood. Anything else?
Yes, it also produces a very small, edible yellowberry.
Oh, nice. Is it good?
Well, the handbook describes it as being full of, quote, sweet slime.
Sweet slime. You are really selling this berry to me.
I admit it sounds like a very acquired texture. But in a highly arid environment, any natural source of sweetness and moisture is highly valuable, regardless of the slime factor.
Fair point. Okay, let's look at another tool tree, the Muthigio, Rus snutalensis.
This one is another fantastic multitasker. Its primary use, much like the Muthiga we discussed earlier, is as a premium source for chewing stick toothbrushes.
So it's another dental tool?
Yes, but it's also a significant dietary staple.
In what way?
The root bark is systematically harvested and boiled down to make a rich, fortifying soup.
Root bark soup.
And the small fruits are also widely eaten. They have a very distinct sour-sweet taste.
It really seems like almost nothing goes to waste in this botanical system. If the main wood isn't useful for building, the bark is used for soup. If the bark isn't useful, the roots or the leaves are used.
That is the absolute definition of ecological efficiency. You use every part of the buffalo, so to speak, but with trees.
Exactly. But you know, my absolute favorite tool in this entire section isn't actually a dead piece of wood that gets carved up.
Oh, I know which one you're talking about.
It's a living tool, the Commiphora emini.
The Mukui tree.
Yes. This was the specific agroforestry hack we mentioned back in the outline.
It is brilliant. So imagine you were a traditional Kikuyu farmer and you are trying to grow a large crop of yams.
Okay.
Yams are naturally climbing vines. They absolutely need some sort of vertical structure to climb up in order to thrive and produce well.
Right.
Now, you could go deep into the forest, manually cut down 1,000 individual sticks, carry them back, and build a massive wooden trellis system by hand every single year.
That sounds like an incredible amount of back-breaking labor, and the dead sticks are just going to rot in the soil anyway.
Exactly. It's highly inefficient. Or, alternatively, you could just plant a mukui tree right in the middle of your yam patch.
But wait, usually planting a large tree directly adjacent to your cash crops is a terrible idea, right?
Normally, yes.
Because the tree's massive root system will aggressively steal all the water and soil nutrients, and the dense canopy will block all the sunlight from the crops below.
Exactly. That is the genius of using the mukui specifically.
How does it circumvent that?
The mukui has evolved a very small, highly non-aggressive, shallow root system.
Oh.
It literally does not compete with the surrounding yam crops for soil nutrients or water in any significant way.
That's convenient.
And furthermore, it naturally has a very light, sparse, feathery canopy. It lets plenty of dappled sunlight filter right through to the ground level.
So it just passively stands there?
It just stands there, anchoring itself. And it grows incredibly easily just from sticking a cut branch into the soil.
So it acts as a permanent living trellis.
Exactly. The yam vines naturally climb right up the trunk and branches. The living tree effortlessly supports their weight, and everyone in the symbiotic system is perfectly happy.
It is literally a living scaffold.
And because it propagates so incredibly easily from basic cuttings, it is also universally used for rapidly growing dense living fences to enclose homesteads and keep livestock secure.
You just jam a line of sticks in the mud, and next to you have a permanent rooted wall.
Exactly. That is just exceptionally smart farming.
It's actively working in harmony with the plant's natural biology instead of constantly fighting against it with brute force. It is essentially advanced permaculture, centuries before the modern word permaculture was even invented.
That really is the overarching theme of this whole deep dive, isn't it? Highly sophisticated, deeply observant environmental adaptation.
Ideally, yes. Now, we have heavily covered the tool shed and the farming hacks. But what about the actual physical buildings themselves?
The architecture.
Right. If we need to build a permanent house, we need some serious, heavy-duty construction materials.
Which brings us neatly to Section 5, Construction and Hardwoods.
If you want to cut a central pillar that will safely hold up a heavy thatched roof for multiple generations without rotting or buckling, where do you go?
You go directly to the Olea europea subspecies africana.
And move to my U.
Better known as the African wild olive.
Now, when people hear olive tree, they need to clear their minds of a certain image.
Yes. Do not picture the short, twisted, gnarled little olive trees you see growing in orderly rows in Italy or Greece.
Right.
This is a towering wild forest tree, and its timber is legendary in the region for being incredibly hard and impossibly dense.
The source manual actually mentions it has a huge caloric value.
Yes.
Which means what exactly?
It means that because the wood fibers are so tightly packed and dense, when you burn it, it burns at an extremely high sustained temperature.
So it makes premium-grade charcoal.
The absolute best. But its extreme physical durability is what makes it the absolute top choice for critical house pillars.
It holds the house up.
And it was also heavily favored for carving traditional weapons, specifically throwing clubs.
Because it's so dense.
It's incredibly tough stuff. If you hit something hard with a Mutamayu wood club, the club is definitely going to win that physical exchange.
Now, interestingly, the classic symbolic concept of offering an olive branch actually exists in this culture too, right?
It does, which I find to be a genuinely fascinating cross-cultural convergence.
It's not just a Mediterranean concept.
Not at all. In traditional Kikuyu practices, taking green, leafy branches of the mutamayu and actively burning them in a fire is a specific ceremonial act done to invoke blessings and establish communal peace.
It's a ceremonial purifier.
Yes. The aromatic smoke is seen as deeply cleansing and pacifying.
So you literally build the physical bones of your house with the dense wood to make it structurally invincible. And then you ritually burn the green branches of the exact same tree to ensure the home remains emotionally peaceful.
Supreme strength combined perfectly with peace. It's a highly poetic, beautiful combination of uses.
It really is. Okay, what about the mukuru tree, Albizia gumifera?
This one is a very large, spreading, deciduous tree. The timber is relatively light but workable, so it's good for general lightweight construction. And of course, carving more beehives.
The beehives strike again. They really love their honey.
They absolutely do. But for me, the most interesting aspect of the mukuru isn't actually its timber. It's its vital role as a biological, ecological marker.
What exactly does it mark in the forest?
Its natural presence in a specific area very often indicates a definitive ecological transition zone between two totally different types of forest biomes.
Oh, I see.
So if you are walking through the dense bush and you suddenly see a stand of mukuru trees, you instantly know the underlying soil composition or the water table is fundamentally shifting.
It's a transition indicator.
Yes, perhaps the land is slowly recovering from a past fire or clearing disturbance, or you are moving from a dry zone into a wetter zone. It's a natural signal tree.
So again, it comes down to being able to accurately read the landscape like a map.
If you know exactly how to read the forest's subtle cues, trees like the mukuru explicitly tell you where you are and what the unseen earth beneath your feet is doing.
That is true environmental literacy. And then we have the muthaita.
Ah, yes. Ocotea usambarensis, the East African camphor tree.
This is the really high-value stuff, right?
Extremely high value. True camphor wood is highly prized globally, not just locally.
Where does it grow?
It thrives primarily in the wet montane forests, the cold, misty, high-altitude zones like the deep Aberdare ranges or the high slopes of Mount Kenya.
Now, when we say camphor, is it directly related to chemical camphor that makes modern mothballs smell so intensely?
It is in the same broader botanical family, and the wood contains very similar, highly pungent aromatic compounds.
It has that very distinct, sharp medicinal smell.
Yes, and that intense aromatic quality is not just there to smell pleasant to humans. It is an evolved, highly aggressive chemical defense mechanism for the tree.
It repels things.
The living wood is absolutely saturated with heavy essential oils that naturally repel boring insects, termites, and highly destructive wood-rotting fungi.
So if you harvest it and build a structure with it, the local bugs just completely leave it alone.
Exactly. It is naturally highly resistant to natural acids and almost entirely resistant to fungal rot.
So if you take the time to build a storage chest or a cabinet out of muthaita wood, it actively protects whatever you put inside it.
Yes. It is basically nature's ultimate cedar chest, but significantly more durable and chemically potent.
Okay, we are getting toward the end of our massive botanical shopping list here.
We've covered a lot of ground.
But we have one final section here in the outline dedicated to hidden gems and oddities.
These are the fascinating outliers.
Right. These are the highly specific trees that just didn't fit neatly into a broad category like tools or construction, but they are just way too cool for us to leave out of the deep dive.
I agree completely, and we definitely have to start this section with the mukau tree.
Milia vulcansi.
Widely known as the mahogany of the drylands.
That is a very bold title.
It absolutely earns it. This specific tree is nothing short of a biological miracle for local communities living in very harsh, arid, dry environments.
Why is it so prized?
Because it quickly produces this incredibly high-quality, beautiful timber that looks and works very much like true mahogany.
Okay.
And crucially, just like the camphor, it is entirely resistant to termite attacks.
And anyone who has ever lived in a dry, sandy environment knows that local termites will systematically eat your entire wooden house to the ground in a single year if you make the mistake of using the wrong, unprotected wood.
They absolutely will. It's a constant battle. But the mukau wood naturally defeats them entirely.
So it's the perfect building material.
But there has to be a catch, right?
There's a massive catch. The source manual clearly states that the mukau is notoriously incredibly difficult to artificially propagate.
Why is that? Does it need special soil?
No, it's the seeds themselves. The viable seeds are tightly encased inside a botanical nut that is quite literally stone hard.
Like impossible to open. It is a hardcore evolutionary defense mechanism to prevent the seeds from being eaten or germinating during a fatal dry spell.
It is literally a tough nut to crack.
Literally. In pure nature, it might require a highly specialized foraging animal to crack it open, or perhaps an intense raging bushfire to naturally weaken the thick shell enough for water to finally penetrate.
But for human farmers who actively want to plant a neat row of them for timber,
it requires serious manual intervention. The farmers literally have to take heavy stones and meticulously, physically crack the nuts open by hand, one by one, without crushing the delicate seed inside.
That sounds incredibly tedious.
Or they have to carefully scorch them in a controlled fire, just enough to crack the hull, but not enough to cook the living seed.
It's a huge gamble.
It is a very high effort, high risk, but ultimately incredibly high reward tree to try and cultivate.
Fascinating. Okay, then we have a tree called the moringa, Cordia africana.
Now, we need to be very careful not to confuse this with the highly trendy modern miracle tree, Moringa oleifera.
Right, totally different spelling, totally different plant. This is Cordia.
Exactly. This tree is characterized by having these beautiful, very large, broad, heart-shaped leaves.
And the outline refers to it as the music tree.
In a very real, functional way, yes. The physical properties of the inner wood are highly unique. It is extremely resonant and very easy to shape and work.
Resonant meaning it carries sound well.
Yes. It naturally vibrates beautifully. Because of that specific acoustic property, it is the absolute preferred premium wood for hand-carving traditional ceremonial drums.
Oh, wow.
It just projects the percussive sound perfectly. And it's also heavily utilized for carving the traditional, iconic, three-legged wooden stools that are so deeply embedded in Kikuyu culture.
So it literally physically supports both the music itself and the musician playing it.
Apparently so. And here is just another one of those amazing, sticky little botanical details.
What's that?
The fresh, sticky fruit of the moringa tree contains a highly viscous natural gum that local artisans extract and use directly as an industrial glue during the construction of those exact same drums.
So once again, the entire required toolkit is built right into the biology of the tree itself. You have the acoustic wood for the drum shell and the sticky glue to attach the leather drum head, all from the exact same plant.
It's just perfectly integrated.
Finally, the last tree in our hidden gems section, we have the maruru, Syzygium cordatum.
Commonly known as the waterberry tree.
This one has a specific domestic use that I honestly found to be incredibly specific and just richly sensory.
I know exactly which one you mean.
Yeah.
This is honestly one of my absolute favorite ethnographic details in the entire source book.
It's all about the milk?
Yes, the milk preservation technique.
So walk us through this.
So, if you live in a hot equatorial climate, in the days long before electric refrigeration was ever invented, how do you keep fresh cow's milk from immediately spoiling and going rancid?
You have to process it somehow.
Right. The Kikuyu and several other pastoral groups in the region developed this highly sophisticated technique of actively treating the insides of their hollow milk storage gourds with heavy wood smoke.
So they literally smoked the empty containers like a chimney.
Yes. They would take small glowing embers of wood, specifically from the maruru tree, drop them into the gourd, and let the thick aromatic smoke completely fill and coat the inner walls.
What exactly does that achieve biochemically?
It does two completely brilliant things simultaneously. Number one, the heavy smoke naturally contains potent antiseptic and antibacterial compounds. So coating the inside of the gourd actively kills off any lingering bacteria and functionally helps preserve the fresh milk poured into it. It essentially pasteurizes the surface area of the container itself.
That is incredibly smart hygiene.
It is. But the second thing it does, and this is where it becomes deeply, profoundly cultural, is that the smoke imparts a very specific, strong flavor directly into the milk.
Like smoked cheese.
Exactly. Traditional smoked milk, specifically milk smoked with the wood of the maruru tree, isn't just functionally preserved. It is actively, deliberately seasoned.
The tree is a spice.
Yes. The burning maruru wood gives the milk its absolute optimal, culturally preferred flavor profile.
That is just endlessly fascinating to me. It is literally culinary smoking, but applied directly to raw dairy.
Exactly. And the cultural preference is so strong that if you try to use the wrong species of wood to smoke your gourd, your milk just tastes horribly like a dirty campfire.
Nobody wants to drink ashy milk.
Right. But if you use the specific maruru wood, it tastes exactly right. It tastes profoundly like home and childhood to the people who grew up drinking it. It is a deep, permanent sensory imprint of the entire culture.
And just as a nice little bonus, the tree also produces edible berries.
It does. It drops these small, dark, purple, very fleshy little berries.
Are they sweet?
They are quite acidic, actually,
Yeah.
but very refreshing. They make a perfect little tart snack to forage while you are sitting there diligently smoking your milk gourds.
Incredible. So we have essentially walked all the way through this entire living forest.
We really have.
We have looked up at the towering cathedral of the Mugumo. We have browsed the pharmacy shelves with the Mathiga and the Muri. We visited the local pub and brewery with the Miratina sausage tree.
We shopped for weapons at the hardware store with the Mundarindu.
And we visited the heavy construction yard with the Mutamayu pillars.
It is a completely functioning, fully integrated city infrastructure, just constructed entirely in a biological style.
So when we pull back and look at this massive catalog altogether, what do you think is the biggest, ultimate takeaway from this deep dive?
For me personally, looking at this source material just completely destroys the tired, old, Eurocentric myth of the so-called primitive society.
What do you mean?
I mean that there's absolutely nothing primitive or simple about knowing the highly specific, complex chemical properties of a bitter bark needed to successfully cure a deadly blood parasite like malaria. There is nothing primitive about calculating the exact necessary tensile strength and elasticity of a specific wood grain to craft a reliable ballistic weapon.
No.
Or mastering the precise microbiological fermentation capabilities of a poisonous wild fruit to safely brew alcohol.
It's highly advanced.
It is entirely advanced, actively applied natural science. It just isn't written down in sterile, peer-reviewed academic journals sitting in a library. It is continuously written directly into the living landscape and passed down through a rigorous oral tradition.
It is a deep, symbiotic relationship. It's not just about thoughtlessly extracting dead resources from the dirt. It is about deeply understanding the living system you are a part of.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But sadly, it is also a vital relationship that is currently under immense critical threat.
Yeah.
That is the very sad, undeniable undertone running through the entire source manual.
Right, because the environment is changing so rapidly.
It is. Ancient vital trees like the Pinus africana are literally being stripped bare and killed to feed insatiable global pharmaceutical markets.
And others are just being lost to modern development.
Right. People are rapidly building modern cinder block and concrete houses with corrugated tin roofs, so they simply don't need to preserve the Mutamayu trees for structural pillars anymore. The forests get cleared for cash crops.
And the tragic reality is that when you lose the specific tree, you inevitably lose the specific culture attached to it.
You lose it entirely. If the Uratina sausage tree disappears from the landscape because of land clearing, the entire structure of traditional Kikuyu wedding ceremonies and dowry negotiations has to fundamentally change.
The center falls out.
Exactly. If the Miraru waterberry tree disappears, the comforting generational taste of traditional smoked milk literally vanishes from the earth.
You literally lose the vital sensory details and the foundational rituals of the entire culture. You lose the glue, both literally with the tree sap and metaphorically with the community bonds. And eventually, that incredible, complex living hardware store just permanently shuts its doors for good.
And we're all just left driving to a strip mall, buying cheap plastic toothbrushes, and importing generic pine timber from 1,000 miles away.
That is a very sobering, heavy thought to end on. But the source material does offer a clear way to push back against that loss, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. It is a manual for action. The book clearly details how almost all of these highly valuable indigenous trees can actually be intentionally planted and cultivated.
They can be deliberately integrated right back into modern working farms.
Exactly. That is the entire core science of agroforestry.
Actively bringing the native forest back into the agricultural landscape.
It is exactly what the Muku Yam support tree taught us earlier. Intensive agriculture and native forestry do not have to be bitter, mutually exclusive enemies.
They can support each other.
We can literally plant the living hardware store right back in our own backyards and farm borders.
So, with all that in mind, here is our final provocative challenge to you, the listener, as you go about your week.
Take a look around.
Yeah, take a really close look at the specific trees growing right in your own neighborhood or in your local park. Do you actually know their proper names?
Do you have any idea what complex chemical or structural functions they might quietly serve?
Is that giant old tree dropping leaves in your backyard actually a hidden pharmacy? Is it a hardware store waiting to be used?
Or is it just anonymous green stuff blocking your view?
Take an afternoon and find out. You might be incredibly surprised to discover exactly what kind of ancient, highly evolved technology is quietly growing right up out of the concrete sidewalk next to your house.
You really might.
Well, expert, thank you so much for taking the time to walk us through this incredible forest today.
It is always an absolute pleasure. Now let's go see if we can forage some of those tart syzygium berries for a snack.
Oh, I am totally in for that. And to you, listening at home or on your commute, thank you so much for taking this deep dive with us today. We will see you right back here next time.